Hi everyone, my name's Amy Smith and I am going to share with you today a quick go through on an edit that I did from an image I took about a month ago, not quite a month ago. I was lucky enough to go to Waikiki Beach in Honolulu, Hawaii, and thaw some of the snow off of our bones. So I was able one morning to be up for sunup and took this image. And I'd like to share with you how I got to this final image. Okay, what I did that day is take a series of 3 bracketed images. Bracketing is when you set your camera in the settings to take a predetermined number of frames that you can determine. Generally, I've never done more than 3 or 4, maybe 5. But you predetermine how many frames you want it to take, and you determine the number of stops that you want each image to differ. For instance, maybe you want the images to be 1 stop apart on the exposure meter. So you will dial that in and set that. And when you depress the shutter, the camera will take 3 consecutive images. It's very helpful if you have this on a tripod, by the way. It will take 3 consecutive images and adjust the shutter speed in order to get the proper exposure as to how you set that in the settings when you set up your bracketing. That can be a whole nother tutorial. If anybody's interested, make sure you make a note below in the comments, and I'd be happy to at some point make a tutorial based on that information as well. But anyway, so I'll show you right now what I'm talking about. So I set it to take 3 exposures. One was obviously overexposed, and you can see on the histogram over here that it is climbing the right side, the blown highlights. There is a middle ground exposure, which is still quite dark, but there's really no blown highlights over here. There's a little bit in the sky if you see the red in the red markers in the sky right above where the sun is. And there's barely any black here in the lower left corner of the clipping of the shadows. So otherwise it's a pretty spread out histogram on the middle exposure. And then we go to the dark exposure, and you can see there are absolutely no blown highlights, but there is some more of the clipped shadows climbing the wall on the left side of the histogram. So that's pretty indicative. That's kind of what you want on a bracketed series of photos. You're going to get that whole wide range across the histogram out of all of the images in that bracketed sequence. So what we're going to do with these bracketed images to end up eventually, finally with this, is we're going to take all 3 of those bracketed images, highlight them all, and as you can see, I am in Lightroom. My workflow is such that I import to Lightroom to my catalogs and organize and keyword there. And if I go into Photoshop, I'll go from here to Photoshop and I'll come right back and finish things. So that's what we're going to do today. So anyway, I have my 3 bracketed images highlighted. I'm going to go up to Photo Merge to HDR, High Dynamic Range. Okay, that's going to give us the full range of light to dark, and it also seems to have a better color range as well. So we're going to put that in, and there you go. As quick as that, which doesn't usually happen that quickly, so hooray. We'll hit merge, and that will work, and it will pop up here in a second. And there we have our merged high dynamic range. So as you can see, we don't have any blown highlights. There's a few little red dots. If we click on that, there's a little bit of red, barely any in the sky. And our darks, our blacks are still clipped pretty much in the windows and in the very depths of the trees, the palm trees. So, but not bad. Okay, so we're going to do some global edits here. I want to bring up the blacks, and I do that a lot. Just put it right on the histogram and drag to the right, and there we're not clipped anymore. That little highlight warning went away. So I know my blacks are pretty good now. My highlights were never clipped really, but I'm going to bring those down. So now they're not highlighted at all if I look at it over there. Okay, I also am going to, as you can see, when it merged, it does some work in the panel here, in this basic panel. So it already brought up a bunch of shadows. It already took down the highlights. It underexposed a little bit to get those highlights out from being super duper high, but we can raise some exposure here and still not blow anything. So I'm going to do that to brighten it up a little bit. And I also think I'm going to warm it up a little bit because it is sunrise and I want that to feel a little warmer. As you can see, if you can see down here in the detail, look at all these surfers out here. It was just so cool to see that each morning. I am going to increase the texture. I'm a fan of texture. It really brings out the windows, the water, the clarity. Also, I'm a fan of clarity. Not too much, but I got it up to 15, and that really gives some definition. I also am going to dehaze just a bit to get rid of some of that morning fuzz, kind of haziness. I also am going to check for our level on the horizon. I think it needs just a little bit of a tweak. Our vertical lines are a little off from our buildings, but that also could be due to the lens. I'm going to go down here and do the remove chromatic aberration. I always do that. And also the profile corrections. And that always does a good job of straightening things a little bit if I've got, because I shot this at 24 millimeters and that's pretty wide. So there was a little bit of distortion, but that did a nice job of kind of brightening things up. Now we do have the highlight warnings on again. So I'm going to click that and make sure we see where it is. And I know our highlights are already brought down, but remember I raised the exposure a little bit. I'm going to take that down just a wee bit and see if that helps at all. Not really with those highlights, but I'm okay with that because it's barely anything right here on these wispy clouds, and we might be able to brush that off too later. So, okay. I think that looks really pretty good. I'm quite happy with it. There's a few things down here. I'm not loving the color of these pink umbrellas. I'm going to see what those are registering as. Right now they're showing up as orange, which does not sound right. Orange magenta. I think it's more magenta, I would guess. So I'm going to put my magenta slider to the right and see if that's reddening them up a little bit. Not much. I'm going to saturate them a little bit more too because they're kind of faded. I want those to kind of pop, but I don't want them to be neon pink. Tiny bit of orange. Get that coral of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel right here going. A little more. That intensified our sky just a little. Well, luminance just a hair. Let's see what color our water is registering here. Aqua. I'm going to enhance that just a wee bit here in Lightroom. And the blues. What's that affecting? Mostly the top part of the sky. We'll brighten up the water just a wee bit. I like the water to be as close to what it looks like in real life, but just a little bit of a bump. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take it, what I'm going to do in Photoshop this time is mostly for color. I have an action in Photoshop that I was able to learn how to do in Kristen Ryan's landscape photography workshop. It's a channel mixer color pop action, and that really does wonders for a landscape image such as this. So in order to do that, we're going to take and go to Photo, Edit In, and we're going to go to Adobe Photoshop. And there we are in Adobe Photoshop. The first thing I do when I get into Photoshop is make a copy of this layer. That way, as I continue on in making edits, if I mess it up or something goes haywire, I'm not working on the base layer. I can take everything off down to the base layer or the original image and start over. So that's what I got there. I made a copy, and then I'm going to go to my Actions panel and go down to, here it is, my channel mixer color pop, and make sure that is highlighted, and we will run that action. So boom, that was quick. And as you can see, it doesn't quite a number, doesn't it? It really bumps everything up. It's pretty spectacular, but it's a little crazy. So that's not quite what I'm after. I love the colors. I love how it looks. It's just a little too much. So I'm going to bring that intensity or that opacity down. I'm at 26%. Let's click the eyeball on and off. And that's definitely, we can tell that we did something there. I might bump it up. Oh, it's at 35. I'm going to go to maybe 30. Yeah, we might leave it at 30, 20. Let's leave it where it was. 35. That doesn't look too bad, and we can play with the specifics in Lightroom one more time and make some more tweaks. So, because that brought our umbrellas, they're pretty pink looking again, but I think we can deal with that. Okay, so that's all I was going to do in Photoshop. I don't have any cloning. That's usually, this is where I do cloning, any masking, you know, any of the intricate work that Photoshop is so good at doing. I don't need to liquefy anything. I don't need to do any kind of extension of the canvas here. So we're just going to take it right back to Lightroom. And we do that by just going to File, Save, and we'll go back to Lightroom and wait just a second. And there it is. Let's see. Yep. Okay, there we have it. That's what we took. Let's see, we took this into Photoshop, and this is what we brought back out. It's just a little brighter, a little more intense. Nothing crazy. So I think next what I'm going to do is I'd love to enhance and play up this sky to get more close to my final image. My final image is a little bright, but I kind of like it. I really love the intense colors. So here we are going to, I'd like to get a little more pink into that morning sky. So I'm going to raise my tint quite a bit. As you can see, there's pink coming in here. Maybe not quite that much, but right around there. Do I need to, not really, I want it to be a little warm because it is sunrise, right? We can always bump up the blues later, but there's that. I also, in this sky, would like to enhance those shadows on those clouds a little more. We'll bring those shadows down. We'll bring those highlights up a little. We're getting a little more blown out right there in that massive, really bright spot. So we're going to tone those down just a little bit, not go too high. I think we can achieve the same thing by adding a little bit of dehaze. That'll enhance the contrast in the clouds and maybe a little texture. And I think that looks pretty good, and I'm going to saturate that just a teeny bit. Okay, very good. Let's deal with the umbrellas really quick. One more time, we'll go down to the HSL panel, and I want to see what that's registering as now. Oops, I didn't mean to click on that. Now it's red. So, okay, I want the red to look even more red. So I am going to take that down up a little bit, actually, on the hue. I want that magenta to be more red. I want it to be maybe a little more saturated there. I really like that color a lot better. And we'll brighten them up a little bit. There, I don't think that pink it's not so pink now. I like that much better. Okay, we're getting close. I think I will raise some of the shadows a little bit and brighten it up. And I think we're getting real close. One more thing I would like to do. Let's see, I like how that looks, but I am going to take down the orange a little bit because it's getting way too saturated here, and this building is getting way too orangey. Too much coral. It's taking my eye away because it's definitely not that bright. And then we're going to raise the orange luminance so it's not so intense over there and out of gamut in that sunrise area. Okay, one more thing I would like to do is to get a brush and maybe try to dehaze a little bit over here on Diamond Head and bring out a little more of that texture, a little more clarity, and maybe dehaze just a little bit on Diamond Head actually itself. So it's a little more defined from where we're looking at it from, and that helps just a little bit. See, we don't want to go too nutso because that darkens it. That just does not look right. So I think that's probably pretty good. Okay, maybe raise those shadows just a teeny. Okay, I like it. I'm going to try to get rid of some of those highlights in the sky. So we're going to clean that up. When you open a new brush or a new filter, if you double click on the effect, it will take away any of the other adjustments you'd made on the previous brush. So it will kind of clean your slate so that you can make a new adjustment brush. So I'm going to really take down some highlights here and brush that over and see if that won't take care of some of these highlights. It's taking care of some of them. That's pretty nice, huh? And it might be a little whites also. Oh, there we go. Some of the whites. So that took care of a lot of that, and that looks really nice. Okay, I think it looks pretty good. I don't think it's quite as intense as the first image go through that I did. I'll add a little dehaze. That's getting a little more intense, a little crazy over here, a little blue, but I think we're in a good spot. I like it. Okay, so that's that, guys. If anybody has any questions about taking it from Lightroom to Photoshop, the bracketing technique, merging in the HDR option up here under photo, anything at all, let me know and I'd be happy to chat. I hope this was helpful at least a little bit, maybe a tip or two that you didn't know about before. And yeah, there you have it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, aloha.